Live from Alachua, Florida, I'm Amrita Kaylee.
And I'm Raman Reti. Welcome to Nectar Talks, from the heart of New Raman Reti, the largest Hare Krishna community in North America and the home of thousands of Bhakti Yoga practitioners.
In our ongoing interviews, we dig deep into our search for loving connections with Krishna and each other.
With you, we hope to uncover the real-life stories and inner journeys of our vibrant community of friends and special guests.
Like bees searching for nectar, we seek to extract pearls of wisdom from how they live their lives and the lessons they can impart to us and our listeners.
If you're seeking nectar, look no further.
All right, let's get started.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to Nectar Talks. This is episode 5, and I'm flying solo today. My partner in crime, Amrita Kaylee, is on a bit of a maternity leave. She just had a beautiful baby girl, and we are so happy for her. A couple things before we get started. We received some requests if there's an option to hear the shows on audio only, and we are working on a podcast platform. The audio access, however, is currently accessible at alachuatemple.com/radio/. This is a nice radio program that's online, put together by Mother Sudharma, and you can find the audio recordings there until we do get that podcast platform up and running. Our YouTube channel is up and running, however, so you can check that out. That's Nectar Talks. And as usual, you can find our upcoming interviews, which we have several lined up once a month at our Nectar Talks Live Facebook page. We do shoot for the first Wednesday of every month, but just as today, sometimes we have to make a little bit of an adjustment. So that's the best place to find the exact time and date and get reminders is on the Facebook page. All right, so today's special guest is Gaura Shakti Prabhu. Gaura Shakti was born and raised in Krishna consciousness by his parents, who are both disciples of Srila Prabhupada. His childhood was spent living in temples, where he received his early education through the Gurukula school system in various places, including Vrindavan, India, and right here in Alachua. At the time, he was also one of the first youth of this growing community to attend college. And Gaura Shakti has been practicing dentistry now for 16 years, building a successful clinic in Ocala, just about an hour away from here. He's the father of 2 teenagers and is approaching 20 years of marriage to his one and only girlfriend, Krishna Dhama. I mean, come on, who can make that claim nowadays? His services in Prabhupada's movement and to our community have included being a board member at the Krishna House in Gainesville. He's helped organize our local Rath Yatras and is a founding member and one of the forces behind the Festival of the Holy Name, a world-renowned program that recently celebrated its 11-year anniversary. And there's many other projects and roles that Gaura Shakti's played throughout the years, but we'll get more into that a little bit later today. Gaura, welcome to the show.
Nam, thank you. Thanks for having me, brother.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for accepting to meet with us today. You and I were supposed to have lunch together. What happened?
I know. Life gets busy, and with coronavirus, it's even harder.
It's even harder. So let's make this just that. You know, we're just chilling. You and I are hanging out, and we're catching up, and we're taking our friends along, and we're looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more. So
I'm honored. I'll do my best.
All right. So Gaura, you were born in the Hare Krishna movement, or the Bhakti path, as it's often called today. And this path of Bhakti, while being a very ancient and precious tradition, is quite a unique way to view and live one's life, especially in today's modern Western society. How does that simple fact relate to how you view your own spirituality? And do you sometimes wonder if you would have sought out something so deeply life-changing on your own hadn't you been born in it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked before about that, Nam, about how fortunate I feel actually to have been born into Krishna consciousness, into a life of surrendering, learning how to surrender one's life in all aspects to Krishna, and what that really means, what that means in generality and in great detail, because you and I were immersed in it, grew up in it. It's just kind of part of our fiber. It's almost what we think of every day as far as the deeper questions. What is life about? What am I meant to do with my life? But in relation to Krishna is how we grew up. And so, yeah, you use the word spirituality versus religion, and definitely being being in that thought process of great scholars and yogis who have thought about these questions for thousands of years and have laid down their realizations for us to read about and hear is what we grew up from. And you could say we heard it in the womb even.
Right, right.
So of course it's a big part of who I am and how I see the world.
Mm-hmm. So give us a quick overview of your early upbringing and how growing up in ISKCON, or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, may have shaped your view on life and how you live it today.
Well, I mean, growing up, even though ISKCON nowadays, it's seen, or even growing up, it was just a small cult, you could say, a small tangent of spiritual growth. But in my world, it was the world. ISKCON, or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, was my world. It was my bubble. I really didn't step out of it very much, except to see my parents' family every now and then. And that was for a very short period of time. Other than that, I stayed with my parents up until age 5. And then I was enrolled in a boarding school called a Gurukula. My parents always went with me to the sites of these Gurukulas. So, for example, I was born in New York, and the first Gurukula I enrolled in when I was 5 years old was in New Vrndavana in West Virginia. And my parents subsequently moved there to enroll me there. And they served at the temple there. And then when they decided to move to Vrindavan, they brought me there and they enrolled me in the school there. So I was fortunate to always have my parents around, even though I was in boarding school. So I felt very secure, very loved by both my parents, and therefore was able to, I feel, explore the philosophy deeply in these boarding schools without much of the baggage. The baggage came maybe later.
Right, right. And we'll talk about the baggage in a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we have some viewers and listeners that are from all around, and some of them aren't so familiar with the Bhakti practice. Relating to you, what are some Bhakti principles that are important to you and that you try to apply in your daily life?
Well, I love how the introduction to this podcast talks about being the honeybee that is searching for the essence, for the pearls. And that is a term from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our acharyas, our thought leaders in our movement, who use the word saragrahi, or essence seeker. And I've always felt a connection with that principle. And from that principle, we can go beyond the rituals, the day-to-day practices, and try to really see, well, how does bhakti relate in every aspect of my life? And so, yes, there are certain practices of bhakti that are very important. The first thing is of chanting the holy name of Krishna in a certain way, the Maha Mantra, as probably has been discussed on this podcast many times. And that is the number one way to practice bhakti. And there's reasons for it. I can go into it. Mm-hmm. But those reasons kind of allow us to practice bhakti while I'm driving. Allow me to practice bhakti while I'm walking, while I'm running, while I'm going to work, while I'm working on a patient even. Mm-hmm. I can be chanting the Maha Mantra, for instance, in my mind.
Right.
So yeah, if I had to pick one practice, it would be chanting the holy name. That is something that can be done mentally, it can be done out loud, and it needs to be done for my own consciousness to be equipped to handle the world these days. It's become my meditation in the morning. It's become my something that I go to when I'm stressed or under pressure, because it gives me that safety. I feel a shelter from it. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Who do you recognize for having given you such an understanding of Bhakti Yoga and its practice? Is it your parents? Is it the community you grew up in? Is it your own studies?
It's all of it. I mean, I was thinking about that today. And even as I was about to go on this podcast, I get nervous. And I'm thinking, well, why am I nervous? They're just talking about me. I don't care about me. And in general, I don't care about it so much, although my ego wants to care about it. But it's also, I feel like right now I'm representing all my parents, my teachers, my gurus over the years who have taught me, who I have asked questions of. And if they see this, if they hear about this, it's like I'm representing them. So who have I become? There's a little bit of a pressure to honor them. And so, I mean, it starts with my parents, obviously. They were both direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And therefore, I learned from Srila Prabhupada's books themselves, reading Krishna book growing up, from my teachers in Gurukul, including His Grace Kramarupa Prabhu and others, my peers, I discussing over the years, over and over again, philosophy, and different devotees in this community who I continue to ask questions from regularly. So I feel blessed, and the ISKCON community has given us so much opportunity to go to festivals and be able to interact with Mahajans, Maharajas who travel around the world preaching, and that's all they do. And so I feel I've been blessed to have had so many different kinds of bhakti and spiritual teachings just thrown at me, given to me, showered on me.
One of the kind of principles in the tradition of bhakti, and especially growing up in ISKCON, I think we can probably both relate that there's a lot of emphasis put on taking instruction from a guru, and more specifically, taking initiation from a guru, where you make certain vows, lifelong vows. And that was pretty standard in the early days when most devotees lived in temples. They were, full-on monks. What are your views on this today, taking initiation? And
how much time do you have?
5 minutes.
I'm just kidding. I will say, as a Guru Kuli, growing up in the movement, initiation is very loaded with a lot of baggage. It's something I haven't fully resolved yet, I will say. But getting back to that, why I haven't fully resolved it, I'll get back to that later. But as far as initiation,
so you don't have an official guru.
I don't have an official guru right now. If I had to say it, I'm gonna say Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. That's how I'll put it. Yeah. When I was going through college, or when I was about to enter college, there was some seeming dissent that I perceived from other community members, from other leaders with my father. And that, along with other things over the years, just led me to kind of have a little bit of suspicion of the leadership of an institution in general, and yes, with the leadership of ISKCON specifically. And as I explored other devotees' experiences over the years, I realized that it was very varied as far as people's relationship with initiation, and I wasn't the only one. And I did look at, what does it mean to be initiated outside of ISKCON? I did look at what does it mean to be a quote unquote Ritvik, where I accept Srila Prabhupada as my only guru and no one else. And I never found, at least up to now, I haven't found full harmony or peace with it. I do think because I grew up in it, I kind of have this gift in a sense of having all the philosophy given to me. And the initiation process is going to be more formal for me. It's definitely needs to be something where I'm formally committing, kind of like a marriage. I'm taking my girlfriend and actually marrying her in front of everybody. So I'm taking this process of Krishna consciousness and declaring it to the world that I will from now on follow this process and this process alone. And I just still haven't committed to that yet, because I do find a lot of pearls of Bhakti even in other traditions.
Right. It's a nice distinction I think you make too, that, it's maybe different for someone who, has grown up in the philosophy and practice of Krishna consciousness, and you already know so much of how to practice through so many different gurus actually. And so that, to take initiation is a formality that, you'll do whenever it's appropriate, if you're comfortable. And so
I'm not saying I'm doing it the right way. I'm just, that's just my experience of life. And, I have many gurus who I would say I listen to their lectures a lot. I remember hearing a lecture from Sachinandan Swami that I relate to a lot, where he says something to the effect of how we can go digging for water in different ways. One way is to dig in different places and dig for just a little while at a time. Or one way is to stay in one place and just keep digging, and eventually you'll hit water. And I found that to be appropriate for me, where as much as I've been exploring and have explored other traditions and other philosophies, I keep coming back to Krishna consciousness because it seems to have everything. It seems to have it all, as long as I just keep digging and going deeper with it.
Right. I want to just get this out of the way now, because I don't want to dwell on, controversial topics and things like that. I want to get to the juice of why you practice bhakti. But, with regards to this theme of, there's baggage that you deal with having grown up in ISKCON and things like that. Is there anything else that you would share or that we could, discuss or elaborate on that, for the sake of highlighting things that we as a community can improve on in the future?
I think they've been belabored and they've been talked about so much within our ISKCON community. I don't know how much more I'm really bringing to the table. It starts with me going to Gurukul and seeing physical abuse around me, and getting out of Gurukul and hearing more about sexual abuse, which I did not experience, and having close friends of mine experience that, and seeing how the authorities at the time didn't really react to it and didn't really take care of it properly. And just seeing that pattern continue in different ways, where, in Christian consciousness, we talk about having varnashram. Varnashram is a structure for society that allows us to function normally in society. And I don't think we had fully set that up yet. I don't think we've still fully set that up yet. I do believe Prabhupada wanted us to set that up in order to function in society. And part of that is having a more of a Kshatriya nature, I would say, more of this managerial mentality that was meant to set the tone for the institution. And early on, that might not have been there. I know my experience of that is through my father. I feel like he did set the tone when he was there. I respect him a lot for the different things that he did. And I just feel like ISKCON needs more Kshatriyas, more warriors, more managers who are willing to make things happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, there's definitely leaps and bounds that have been achieved over the years since those early
Absolutely.
mistakes, and we'll keep on working at it. Um, so I want to get into the topic of the day, which is the Bhakti career balance, and I think you're a great example of that.
As are
Um,
you.
thank you. Tell us a little bit about, before we jump into the practice and how you connect the two, but tell us about your educational background and how you decided to become a dentist.
Well, um, educational background, I did academics in Gurukul in Vrindavan, and did 8th grade as a correspondence course as we were moving from Vrindavan to Alachua, and finished 8th grade, I think a year early, went into high school a year early at Santa Fe High School right here in Alachua,
Mm-hmm.
and was one of the few devotees that went there. I wasn't the first one. I think my friend Samba was one of the first ones to go there. And yeah, it was quite a culture shock for me to be in a Western school after growing up in Gurukul, and also being Indian. I was a little bit fresh off the boat, and it was tough socially, but I made it work. I had a lot of devotee friends, so I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up being valedictorian, or number one in my graduating class. And the only reason I mentioned that is I had the guts to give my valedictorian speech and then afterwards say Hare Krishna at the end. I'm still proud of that. And after that, so when I graduated, my father has always been super practical. Told me that I gotta get a career to raise a family, and I did an aptitude test at Santa Fe Community College, and it said that I'd be good at the medical profession. And now my father's father, was a doctor in the military, and so my father said, "Don't become a doctor. It's a hellish life. Don't become a doctor." But then he told me to become a dentist, and I had no idea about becoming a dentist. I had no desire to do that, no interest in it at all. But my father's telling me to do it. He's giving me logical reasons, and it makes sense. And all right, I'll just do it. And so
Mm.
out of high school, they had a 7-year program at the University of Florida in Gainesville, where if you interview at the dental school and you follow certain classes and you get certain grades, you're automatically enrolled into dental school after 3 years of undergrad. And
Mm-hmm.
so I jumped on that program, and yeah, went straight through 7 years straight out of high school, went straight through and graduated dental school at age 24. And that's my education.
That's
Been a dentist.
amazing. Yeah, that's so. I find that admirable somehow that you just took your father's advice and you ran with it, and I think that was good advice.
You know,
Would you say, are you any regrets, or are you perfectly happy that you followed your dad's
people
advice
that
on this?
know me know that that comes with so much baggage somehow. Like, I hate dentistry, and yet it's been so rewarding to me.
Right.
I'm out there in the real world having to deal with mouths and ornery people, but it pays the bills and it's good hours. I mean, I can go into it. Over the years, I've struggled at points. I've hated my dad, but overall, I got to be grateful. I mean,
Right, right.
it's the path that I was given. It's the path that I took, and it's been beneficial. So I can't complain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not only are you practicing dentistry, but you're also a great entrepreneur when it comes to your clinic. I mean, from what I heard of you, you've built this up from the ground up, and it's developing even more. Can you share a little bit about, people know, okay, a dentist, you work on teeth, but tell us about the business aspect of it, and some of the milestones you went through in building your clinic to what it is today, and maybe even some of your vision for the future.
Well, that's a great question. Um, when I got out of dental school, all I wanted to do was work for somebody else, because the way I had it in my mind is as soon as I clock out, so to speak, then my spiritual life starts.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to go work, make the living that I needed to, but then be done with it. And then my spiritual life, or I would even say at the time, my real life would start. And that's when I would work with other friends on Village of Vrndavana, on Kuli Mela, on Rath Yatras, go to board meetings. And that's what I felt my service was.
Mhm.
And the whole owning my own practice was never really something I wanted to do, actually. Again, just like dentistry, I never really wanted to do it. I mean, that's been my life. Anyways, so when the opportunity was presented, and it's worked out so nicely. It took a while, but what I noticed, the biggest challenge that I noticed is I had to grow as a person, because my mindset for those first few years, as I was saying, going in and just working and clocking in, clocking out, it's a little bit of a Shudra mentality, or a mentality of just being a worker.
Mhm.
And I'll differentiate that from moving up to a Vaishya. A Vaishya is a businessman or an entrepreneur. And I found that to be a Vaishya took another level of consciousness. I had to be more of a leader. Now I had to care about other people's lives, their families, even, because they're earning a living through my practice.
Right.
And I had to take that into consideration. And that started becoming, and it still is, I would say, a heavy responsibility, because now I grew from 2 employees to 11 employees now.
Hmm.
And besides the employees, there's vendors that I have to interact with, and suppliers, and constantly managing things. And I would say having to step up to that plate and become that Vaishya and Kshatriya. So the higher consciousness had to get downloaded within me, or I had to grow to that level. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. And I still find it challenging.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, what's it like to be a boss? What are some of the interpersonal skills that have to be applied there?
Well, the funny thing is, when I first started, people would ask me, "So, what do you want to do?" And I'd be like, "Well, what do you mean? What do I want to do? How is it supposed to be?" They said, "No, there's no supposed to be. How do you want it to be?" And that was a question I was like, wow, I get to choose. And that was quite a shock for me. I always felt like I only did multiple choice in my life. And at this point, when you become a businessman, an entrepreneur, you can really there are opportunity to think outside the box and really market yourself in a different way, or do things in a creative way. And so that is definitely something a boss can do, is think of processes, think of systems that are innovative, that serve the patient, that serve the employees better, and just doing it my own way. So that's been kind of cool. I think that's what helped me stay in dentistry, to be honest, because at one point I was going to quit dentistry, and then the opportunity was to open my own business. And at first I was thinking, that sounds like more work. But even though it was more work, it's definitely more fulfilling, because I'm, for the most part, doing things my way. So I definitely find it much more satisfying. It's much more, the creative juices flow much more, and more planning, more thinking, more communicating with people and interacting with people and getting their ideas and their viewpoints. That's all had to come out of me in order to make it happen.
Awesome. That's great how you're using this as a personal growth tool, it sounds like.
It has to be. I mean, everything we do in Christian consciousness, I mean, in life is about purifying us ultimately, I think, getting us closer to being in Krishna consciousness, no matter what we're doing. And so doing things at our best level, doing things in a sattvic way, is just what we do as devotees, I think.
Right. So you said to me once along those lines that referencing your work, that this is my Kurukshetra. And I thought that was such an amazing and appropriate analogy for us to consider today. Can you elaborate on what makes you say that, and perhaps even draw some parallels from the Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary text, scriptural text of India, and the Battle of Kurukshetra, where the scene was set?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what keeps me going every day. Is I have to think about the Bhagavad Gita before I start work. And the main reason is so the Bhagavad Gita is set in the right before this major battle of Kurukshetra, as you're talking about. And the top warrior at the time is Arjuna. He is known to be number one on both sides. And yet he's having doubts. He's presenting doubts to, luckily, the Supreme Lord himself, Krishna, and saying, I don't know if I want to do this. And he gives all these really logical reasons that still make sense. But Krishna says, I made you a warrior. In fact, he calls him Savyasachin in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Savyasachin means you can shoot an arrow both sides. You can shoot your bow and arrow both ways. You're not just right-handed or left-handed. He was ambidextrous when it came to archery. So I made you, that's who I made you, Arjuna. I made you Savyasachin. And he says, Nimitta matram bhava Savyasachin, become my instrument. That's Krishna's instruction. And so I don't know if I'm a dentist instrument, but right now I am. And right now when I go to work, even though a lot of times I don't want to be there, a lot of times I don't want to do it, you could say, just for a second. And then I have to talk to myself and remember Krishna's words and realize that I'm doing this as a service. I'm doing this as a service to my patients. I'm doing this as a service to my staff members who are earning a living. I'm doing it as a service to my family. And I'm doing this as a service to my deities, Nitai Gaura Chandra. That's who I offer my earnings to. And also the community of devotees. So yeah, that's my service.
Beautiful. There's a lot of emphasis in our society that we're a preaching movement. Do you consider yourself a preacher?
No, I don't. This is something that I've actually, in some ways, struggled with. Because growing up, that's what I felt that's what we were supposed to become. We were being molded to become preachers. Right. Learning how to chant in the streets, learning how to distribute books, learning the philosophy outright so that we could logically argue with people. That's what I did growing up. And it just never felt right to me. It never felt like that was something I wanted to do. And then there's a couple of reasons for it. I first of all, it isn't in my nature to tell people how to live their lives. I've never found myself to be an authority on how to tell somebody else how to live their life. There's so many extenuating circumstances to a situation. Sure. And so I listen to people a lot, but I usually don't tell them what to do. Right. And then the other aspect of preaching is I feel like it comes with complete 100% confidence of the truth behind it. And I have to be honest, where I'm at least amongst the scientific community, when I start talking about science, it's hard for me to incorporate all of Krishna consciousness.
In your eyes, what does it mean to make a spiritual contribution to society? Is it only for, the Hare Krishnas distributing books in the streets, or for that matter, for the Martin Luther Kings or the Bhakti Vinod Thakurs of the world? Can we all make a spiritual contribution somehow, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, I take refuge in statements such from Srila Prabhupada, our founder, or from books, etc., that talk about how even if I'm just chanting by myself in my room out loud, I'm purifying the living entities, the bugs that are in the room. I'm purifying the atmosphere. I'm purifying that part of earth. And therefore, just me chanting for 15 minutes in my room by myself is spiritually contributing to the world, 100%. And so that's the most basic aspect. Beyond that, obviously, is preaching. I won't say that preaching is something that shouldn't be done at all. I do know that in our philosophy, it's actually recommended, right in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the dearest devotee is he who preaches his message. So there's definitely precedent to become a preacher. I guess my preaching style, or my contribution, as you said, to society from a spiritual aspect, in my opinion, it's for me to be a good example, a good example of somebody who's balanced, somebody who is firm in my faith, but at the same time open to hearing other people's points of views and hearing what their perspective on spirituality is.
I love that. Gaura, sometimes I personally feel overwhelmed at the thought that the responsibility of Srila Prabhupada's movement is getting passed on to us, the next generations. How do you feel about it?
Oh yeah, no, that bothered me for a while. And I won't say it's completely gone, but I did hear years ago that even the ISKCON leadership was kind of giving up on us second generation and already going to the new bhaktas that were coming in and giving them the leadership role. So I was like, okay, we're off the hook. So,
so that was you found a twist
actually,
on that one.
Hearing that, as a young Guru Kuli, I was like, oh, they don't have faith in us. Oh, I was all upset about it. Now I'm actually relieved by it. Oh, wow, okay. I don't have to be the one that's actually carrying on the physical institution itself. That's not my job anymore. I used to think it was. My dad was a GBC. I was going to grow up to be a GBC. That was my goal in life, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. But now I see it more as, let me lead people to Krishna. And as I see, and I'm seeing it right in front of my eyes, that ISKCON is changing. It's becoming more welcoming. It's becoming more open. I want to direct people to come to the Krishna temple. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, I recently attended, I think it was called ISKCON North America 3.0 Strategic Planning.
Yeah.
An amazing, extremely well organized program. It was all online. And it actually gave me a lot of confidence in our future. And in this meeting, they defined, because it's called ISKCON 3.0, they defined ISKCON 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0 as first the time when Srila Prabhupada was present, and then the time from when he left the world to the present day, and 3.0 is ISKCON moving forward, which I really liked. What would you say is a unique contribution that your generation, the second generation of Hare Krishna devotees, is best positioned to offer Srila Prabhupada's mission and the Bhakti path moving forward in this ISKCON 3.0 idea?
That's a great question, Nam. So my generation, being the second generation, people know a lot about the abuse. People know a lot about the baggage. People know a lot about the negativity, so to speak. I found a community of Guru Kulis who have matured, who have learned to see past that. And I feel the real contribution that we bring is that for the upcoming 3.0, ISKCON society to have more love and compassion. We, as Guru Kulis, felt like we did not have the support of the adults, and in general, we kind of hooked together and grew strong bonds. This is a generalization, and through that love and caring for each other, no matter what we're going through, I think I've seen that appreciated by the older generation, as well as some new bhaktas who have come in. And even though Guru Kulis are a weird species, people usually see that they're full of love and compassion for each other. Mm-hmm. And devotees can have that level of love and compassion for each other where we care for each other no matter what. And there might be some judgment that goes on, but it's out of love, and love and care is always given. And so I think that's something that can be incorporated into ISKCON 3.0 for sure.
Awesome. Well, you seem to me like a pretty dedicated practitioner of spirituality, bhakti. I want to talk about this idea of, how does one track his or her spiritual development? Do you find it hard to track your own spirituality? Specific to the Hare Krishna movement back in the day used to be how many books did you distribute, or how many new devotees did you have join a temple? What are the metrics by which we can judge our spiritual growth and contribution based on your experience?
Well, the spiritual journey is a very internal one. It's difficult to have external metrics that kind of show you where you're at. I mean, there are some for sure. If I know somebody who's chanting 64 rounds of japa a day, I'm going to say they're pretty elevated because they're doing something consistently for a long period of time every day towards their Krishna consciousness. At the same time, just having a general level of, let's say, 16 rounds, which was the basic. I know used to know plenty of people who are chanting 16 rounds, but don't seem very Krishna conscious. And so now usually they stop chanting their 16 rounds. So I do have to say that the chanting of the rounds seems to be one consistent thing externally that seems to show whether someone is serious or not about their bhakti, about their Krishna consciousness. And I'm not saying the number in particular, just the consistency of doing it. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, those who I've met who are sincere, there's some form of chanting going on a consistent basis. So that's definitely a metric that I see. Mm-hmm. But overall, because it's such an internal process, I think we have to look at our acharyas, our teachers, and Rupa Goswami himself gives the chronology of reaching prema, or pure love of God, and it starts with few things, and I'm still at those bottom levels. When I look at my life, I realize that I'm still at the lower levels. And then there's this one big level, in my opinion, that's called anartha nivritti, or clearing out the dirty things from the heart. And I feel like I'm still there. There's a lot of dirty things to clean out. I mean, if I'm honest with myself, then that's the stage I'm at on my spiritual journey. I'm doing a little bit of bhajana kriya, a little bit of, not as much as I could, and that's probably why I'm still stuck at this stage, but it's slowly becoming a more something that I look forward to versus something that I have to do. It's becoming more of a spontaneous desire to want to be doing, thinking, actively serving in a way so that at the same time I'm clearing out the dirty things from my heart, because I'm realizing the more I can clear out, the happier I am. And so not just the happier, but then I start seeing that I'm more attached to Krishna conscious things, Krishna conscious topics, Krishna conscious activities. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm still at the bottom rungs. And I would say, if we're honest with ourselves, we've been given the roadmap. We've been actually given the roadmap by our teachers. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can kind of place ourselves where we're at on the river.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're an integral part of the new Raman Reti community. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you've been involved in many projects, such as the Festival of the Holy Name, the Village of Vrndavana. And I would go as far as saying that you and the team you're a part of are probably one of the reasons why this community is world renowned. Despite the numerous successes that we've seen here at New Raman Reti, what are some other achievements that you would like to see for our community in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow, Nam, caught me off guard on that one. I was about to talk about Festival of the Holy Name. What would I like to see in our community? Our community, and I'll first say community meaning the ISKCON global community. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing family. I will say that right before I entered dental school, I went on a trip to Europe, and it was just me and two friends, two guru coolies, and we were able to stay at different devotees' houses or ISKCON temples all throughout Europe, for the most part. And it was amazing to feel immediately go into a temple and immediately feel welcome, immediately feel like you had community, you had somebody to relate to, somebody you could talk to. I had that experience anyways. And that never left me, that we are blessed to have such a global network and a global community. When I go out into the real world, I have staff members who don't know 100 people, let's say. Right. And I'll have 100 people over at my house for a program easily, and probably 200 people, when we had Festival of the Holy Name. And I know each and every one of them. I know their kids, I know their parents, I know what they do. I know them pretty intimately. I've eaten at their house. It's amazing. I know that many people, and people don't even believe it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, over the next 5 years, if our community could, and is, as it evolves, continue to grow together and appreciate what we have. It's pretty amazing what there's that Prabhupada built a house that we could all live in, and I do feel that the whole world can live in. And the example of that is the Alachua community. The Alachua community is so diverse, actually. We have so many, you could say, factions of ISKCON living here, and somehow they all coexist here in Alachua. Somehow we've all learned how to see past those little minute differences and continue to chant Hare Krishna together and discuss philosophy together, even in a cordial way. To me, that's beautiful. That's what I want to see continue, I guess.
Keep developing that. Great.
Yeah.
So I do have to ask you about Festival of the Holy Name. We don't have so much time, but just tell us, just a little bit about this amazing program. And you guys, for the pandemic, you even were really smart in how to still have the festival. Tell us a little bit about your experience as being part of that team, and what you consider a success through that program.
Yeah, I mean, that festival is definitely, I see I'm wearing it on my shirt. It's definitely something that I am so proud to be a part of. And mainly because over the years, the group of people that put it on are just so enlivening to work with. Like everybody on the team, their only goal is to satisfy the objectives that we're going for, which has to do with serving the devotees and chanting the holy name. And there's no personal agenda. There's no ego trips going on. I mean, we run into it, and we've resolved it over the 10, 11 years. And that's been a beautiful experience to grow together through our egos, through our anarthas, our unwanted things in our heart being cleared out. And so, no, I just feel blessed to be part of it. It's something that started out with just the vision of, oh man, all these kirtan festivals are happening around the world, and we have half the kirtaniers here. Why don't we just have a kirtan festival here in Alachua? And that's basically how it transpired. And to hear my daughter's generation grow up and talk about how the Festival Holy Name was everything to them growing up spiritually, it's pretty amazing to hear.
And what about, I mean, during the pandemic, you weren't able to hold because this is a 3-day festival usually, right? It happens once a year around Thanksgiving, and you even have pre-festival days leading up to it. So altogether, it's like a whole week of chanting, and I mean, people come from all over to this festival. So how did you guys manage to still hold the festival recently during the pandemic?
Well, with a lot of humility, we had to, but there was a desire to still bring people together in a safe way, and call out. You know, kirtan means calling out the name of God, calling it all out. And if we're doing it in unison, you feel it. We feel it, right. But beyond that, we know based on what we've learned that God's hearing us. And we knew there was a need for it, especially during a pandemic. I mean, what other time is there a need to call out and really ask for help would be now. And so, you know, we tried to do it at the temple for one day, one live event. We were doing a lot of smaller events at my house. And luckily there were enough kirtaniers or people who are kirtan experts in our community who are grounded and can't go anywhere. So they're excited about being part of the festival in some way. But what was interesting is right before our actual one-day live event, I actually got COVID. And so, you know, it was banned from being at the temple because the authorities didn't want any of it spread over there. And it was at my house. So I had to actually stay inside my house, quarantine, while everything was happening outside my house on my property. But I still got to serve the devotees, and people stayed 6 feet apart. They were wearing masks. To my knowledge, nobody got, you know, we don't know for sure, but we were pretty strict during that festival at Thanksgiving time. And I don't think there was any spread of the virus during that time.
Right. But what I'm referring to is this incredible worldwide online festival.
That was my wife's idea. That was
okay. Well, that was amazing.
That was amazing.
Just
she had this vision. Yeah, she had this vision of doing this kirtan festival, and we were all kind of looking at her as Festival Holy Name team, trying to figure out what she's intending. And we tried 2 different things, and we finally got something going. And all of a sudden, there was like 24/7 kirtan for 2 weeks. That was not planned. It really was not planned. It was, we thought we would get, you know, a few kirtaniers from around the world, mainly in the United States. We ended up getting, I think it was over 100 countries participated. We had kirtans streaming from all around the globe, 24 hours a day for 2 weeks straight. And it was actually awesome. I mean, we were in this spiritual vortex at the time. There was a lot of dirty things being cleared out of the heart, believe me. And it was awesome to be able to serve to our extreme and see something come out way bigger than we would have imagined. It was all the Holy Name and Krishna and my wife. It was amazing.
Yeah. And if people want to go and watch some of those kirtans, what's the Facebook page for them to check them out?
You have to get me on that.
It's still out there.
I'm such a not social media guy, but
was it Festival of the Holy Name Pandemic?
Yeah, Festival of the Holy Name. Or no, I'm sorry, Alachua Kirtan. If you go to alachuakirtan.com, we have a lot of audio recordings, and then there's a Facebook page associated with it.
Yeah. All right. People can find it. All right. Well, we're getting close to our hour, but I just want to cover one more thing, Gaura. And that is your amazing positive energy that you have wherever you see. Wherever we see you, you're like a cheerleader with all those that you meet. And I'm sure that's why you're often asked to MC live events. You have this great energy, and I think you're very much appreciated for this quality. Where
Well,
does
thank
this come
you.
from?
Well, when Prahlad Maharaj was asked from his father, where do you get your power from? From God. I don't know. I don't know, Nam, where I get it. It's just a combination of, I think, growing up in Gurukul meaning boarding school, and just being around groups of boys all the time, and just wanting to be the happy one in the group, wanting to keep everybody happy, not fighting, joyful, doing things together. It just felt more energetic, more fun that way. So I would say it starts with that. And I've worked on it over the years. I got to be honest. I'm actually an introvert by nature, and I force myself to kind of come out and do that because it's more fun.
So are you naturally like that, or is it something that you kind of like force yourself as a kind of like an active?
Well, I mean, I force myself in the way of like affirmations or telling myself to just be positive. So yeah, in that way I force myself. It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come naturally most of the time. But doing it for so many years, it's starting to come naturally for sure, right?
Is there anything that makes you sad or upset, Gaura? I mean,
Oh,
what does that Gaura look like? Tell us.
Gator football games. No, I'm just
Okay.
No, definitely. Talk to my wife and my kids sometime, or my staff members. They'll tell you.
Well, Gaura, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time with us this evening. I don't know if there's any comments that we want to read from our tech team there. Questions or comments?
Amrit Kelly, who is our team member, who is now absent, but she writes, Go Shakti, I so appreciate your thoughtfulness, authenticity, and reflections on your own life and the movement as a whole. So,
Thank you, Amrita Kaylee.
And on a personal note, Mother Loka Sakshini said that you are so fortunate to have Mother Sunita as your mother.
It's funny, when you said Mother Loka Shakshini, my first reaction was one of my many mothers. So thank you, Mother Loka.
Yeah. I mean, everything else.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing those comments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nam. Always appreciate talking with you, man.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap it up, but Krishna Dhama said she was going to photobomb you. This is your moment, Katie. Is she around?
She actually copped out, man. She actually copped out when I told her.
Okay. Well,
yeah, she said, "Oh no, this is for you. This is not me."
But we can't end without acknowledging your wonderful spouse, Krishna Dhama. Tell us a little bit about her and your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, as I was talking with Nam in the pre-interviews, I realized that I wouldn't be here without my wife. So I have to mention her. I mean, we met when I was 16, she was 15. We've been together ever since. So we've been on this journey together. And I'm just so appreciative that, well, there you go, that she's brought these deities into my life, Nitai Gaura Chandra. And she continues to challenge me spiritually and invoke a deeper sincerity for my practice. And she continues to support me in so many ways that I'm very grateful.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I want to thank you again, Gaura Shakti, for joining us here on Nectar Talks. It was a real pleasure. Thank you, everybody who are here with us live. And of course, you can watch the interview or listen to it after the fact on our different platforms. Our next interview will be with Vrinda Sheth next month. So we look forward to that. And we'll see you all soon. Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare Bol.